Hey everyone, Larry Chen here. Today we are at Race Service. We're doing a fun night school, and it's like a speaking event where I just kind of talk about my career. So we're gonna do something different from our normal content. I'm gonna play the entire event for those of you guys who could not make it to Los Angeles for this event. I just wanted to give a big thanks to my friends from Race Service for putting this together. It's just an honor to be able to work with these very talented individuals, so I hope you guys enjoy.
Welcome to Night School. I'm sure many of you have been to Rise and Shine, the events that we put on every Friday, the first Friday of every month. And those types of events are part of the original concept of Race Service. So Race Service started over 6 years ago now, if you can believe it. Back at the beginning of Race Service, the idea was to bring together a group of creatives, filmmakers, designers, racing drivers, car builders, and see if we could take our passion for car culture and connect that to other parts of contemporary culture, as we would say, so music, video games, fashion, design, art, and then start working with car companies, motorsports organizations, to do all sorts of content productions and collaborations. But one of the other concepts with Race Service from the very beginning was to have a community space. And we had this concept of the culture hub, that we wanted to make this space that you're in here a car culture destination. Now we're thinking it's a good time to bring back Night School. So the idea here is every quarter we're going to bring in an inspirational figure, and we're going to see what we can learn from them. We're going to dissect their career, we're going to see all the lessons that they learned, all the best practices, and we're just going to see if we can leave here inspired. Our subject tonight is Larry Chen, and I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about how I came across Larry. The first drifting event I ever went to was in 2006, D1GP, Irwindale. 2007, I started going to all the events. I was working for EA, Need for Speed, Speed Hunters. And I remember I had my own crew of photographers back then, but there was this one guy who always wore dress shirts, collared shirts. And I'd always be like, why is this guy wearing a dress shirt? And he always had these giant lenses, 600 mil, 400 mil, and no one else in the Formula D paddock had this lens. And we never really spoke to each other back then. I was always eyeing this guy with the collared shirts, but that led to this one moment. Back then, Formula D had a stop in Las Vegas. And for whatever reason, Larry and I ended up in this tower together with our telephoto lenses alone, just watching the drifting come through. And that's the first time we started chatting. And we started egging each other on to use slower and slower shutters. I remember just the cars coming through, hitting the shutter, and just they're being black. I couldn't even see what was happening. And that formed our friendship. That's the first time we really spoke. We were just together in this tower at Vegas. For me, that was a seminal moment. But back then, I was running this crew of photographers. And with Speed Hunters, we had this concept. No, just wait a sec. This is a good story about you. It's going to end up with an amazing compliment to you. But we had this crew of photographers, and we wanted to more focus on the idea of this crew. But I had this frustration with this crew of people because they wanted to more shoot themselves than the cars. The next year, Larry joined the team, and it was incredible the effect that he had on this team of photographers because he brought this level of discipline that I had never seen before. He would just keep shooting and shooting and shooting, and it had this whole effect on the entire team. And we would go to these 24-hour races, and I was just in awe of Larry, seeing his work ethic. And I believe that this is one of the things that Larry does more than any other photographer that I've ever had the pleasure of working with, is his discipline and how focused he is, and how he's just willing to pound the pavement and shoot and shoot and shoot, week in, week out, and it's just an incredible thing. So please welcome Larry Chen to the stage. Hi, Larry. I thought we would do a little exercise together, Larry, and that is, I have asked Larry to send in some photographs, and we're going to look through the story of Larry's career through pictures?
First of all, I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank Race Service, Jacob, James, everybody here for creating this thing, this venue, this thing that is Race Service that is just so good for the car culture community. Also, I'm blown away that all you guys came to hear me talk. I definitely appreciate it. Hopefully, the takeaway is just a little bit of inspiration for all of you to go out and just do what you want to do what you love, shoot what you love, and enjoy cars, car culture, the way I enjoy it and the way Rod enjoys it. And hopefully we can all kind of work together to save this thing that we love so much and just grow this passion.
I'm ready to start. Do we have
All
to
right,
save
so
car culture?
So Rod, okay, I don't know anything that we're gonna talk about, honestly. Rod asked me if he should share the outline or any of the questions. I told him no. Let's just do this thing. Let's just talk, because we've known each other for so many years. We've been through so many thick and thin, all these different scenarios, just working all over the world. So we'll see how this goes. He did ask me to choose 8 pictures throughout my career that have had some sort of impact or at least represent a certain moment in my career. So this is just 8 photos that I put together. I don't know if you chose any other photos on your own.
I added a couple more.
Okay, here we go. This is all a surprise, I promise.
So what are we looking at, Larry? Talk me through this.
So this was my real first big drift event where I got a media credential, where I wasn't shooting through the fence, where I was able to shoot in the media pits to get the best photos possible. So this was at Irwindale. I really got so much practice, and I really got just into shooting racing, shooting drifting, and shooting cars at Irwindale Speedway. I wouldn't say it's my home track, but it's pretty much where I started. And this was D1 in 2006. And I had my Rebel XT. You know, it was a full, like, beginner camera. Up until this point, I never really had a chance to shoot this kind of driving. I never had a chance to shoot drifting. I would shoot autocross, I would shoot car shows, I would shoot when I have a chance, but I always had an inkling. I knew how to capture this sort of action, but I finally had a chance to put it to the test here. Shooting with slow shutter, shooting with TV time value and manual, and just playing with the settings. I know at the time I barely had like a memory card that could fit a full day's of shooting, so I had to constantly delete photos as I went along to save space, and I would just delete the bad ones and I would keep the good ones. But yeah, this was a very early look into my drift photography career.
Were you shooting RAW here?
No, this was JPEG. I didn't. This is gonna sound really bad, but I didn't start shooting RAW until Pikes Peak. I think 2013 was when I fully converted to shooting in RAW.
Wow. That's amazing.
Very late in the game, yeah.
So at this time, what were you trying to accomplish? Did you have this idea that you could become a professional photographer, or was it a hobby, just a passion thing? Where were you at?
At this time, this was fully just a hobby. I just paid my own way. I saved up my own money, and I did anything I could to get in front of the cool action. What you guys will see in terms of a theme is that so much of this is just doing. When you were talking about putting in that work ethic, I've been very, very candid so many times. Anytime I get interviewed, anytime I'm on podcasts, I say that the reason why I'm shooting longer and going earlier and staying later and putting in that more time is because I understand my skill. I know my skill level as a shooter, and I just need more attempts. I just need more runs. I need the sun to be perfect in terms of like a sunset or sunrise. I just need more chances, and then I can get good photos because all the time I'm standing next to somebody who's shooting, my peers, the people that inspire me to become a better photographer. And I look at their photos and I think, how the heck are you getting that shot? Just like us standing together at Formula Drift doing these slow pans, I honestly understand that my physical capabilities in terms of skill as a photographer means that I just need more chances. And that's why I put in the hours, put in the time.
So why do you have a still frame from Gran Turismo?
Yeah, so this looks like Gran Turismo, but this was from Fuji Speedway in 2008. And this photo kind of represents a time period where I was just grinding so much to do anything I could to make money just to pay my way to go and be in front of the cool action. Even to the point where it's just so crazy for me now, but like this event, the Nismo Festival in 2008, I took a train to Fuji Speedway from Tokyo. And when I tell people that, they're like, what? That's insane. It's just so much traveling. It's like 8 hours of traveling at the time just to get to the racetrack midday, just to shoot like 2-3 hours before the event is over. But I didn't have a choice. I remember at the time, I was like, okay, first train comes at 4 a.m., got to be at the train station, get on the train, take this bus, take this, that, whatever, walk all the way. And then I finally end up at Fuji Speedway. Midday, the event's pretty much almost over. I go out there just in time for golden hour, and I just shoot my heart out. And it's like living my Gran Turismo dreams in real life. It was pretty incredible. At that time, I really was just doing everything I could to shoot as much as I could, paying my own way.
What outlet did you have? So you're shooting, where was it going? Because this is right before social media really went.
It was, yeah.
So what were your prospects at the time? What were you thinking?
So I started shooting cars and car culture around 2004. And my thinking was that when I was into airplanes as a kid, or cars, or anything that I liked, all I wanted to do was to find photographs, high quality photographs. I would either print them out or I would find them as desktop wallpapers and I would just cycle them through. It was just so hard to find really good high resolution photographs. It was kind of around the time period when film cameras were getting surpassed by digital in terms of quality. So then it was like just at the cusp of the end of film cameras getting scanned versus like digital photos created digitally natively for the internet. But at the time, the bandwidth internet wasn't good enough. So it was really hard for me to dig for this stuff. And then when I started self-publishing my own stuff on Drift Photos, the point was to try to create something that I would have liked to have as a kid. High quality photos of cars that I could only dream of having pictures of. And my thought was, okay, so if I offered this, people will download it and people will share it and people will tell other people about these photos. So if you'll notice, one of the things that I don't do is I don't watermark my photos because I want people to take them and I want people to enjoy them and share them and print them out. And that was my original intent. And one of the things that I heard a lot from teams, drivers, and the people that started hiring me earlier, they were always saying, man, your photos are so clear. But what they don't realize is it's just something so simple. I was just publishing them at a higher resolution, higher than what the monitors were at the time.
Yeah, I remember that. Drift Photos was the only place you could get high quality shots, especially of Well, drifting. All right, let's see what we have next. All right.
So this picture is pretty self-explanatory. This was on the set of Gymkhana 4, which was the first time I had a chance to work with Ken. I've done a couple jobs here and there with him and his team before, and I've even lined up with him. I've said many times in podcasts and stuff, my first interaction with him was at American Gymkhana. He came to a local Gymkhana event where I had my 240Z, 1970 240Z, 143 horsepower to the wheels I made. And this guy used his Gymkhana 1 car, the Subaru Crawford Performance Hawkeye Gymkhana 1 famous car, without a bumper. He lined up at the Christmas tree with me. I looked over, I'm like, I cannot believe I'm gonna go up against Ken Block. You know, he wasn't even that big of a name back then, but in the car world, he was huge. As soon as I saw that Christmas tree start moving, I feel like it was still red. I just dropped the clutch and I just tried to cut the light to beat him through the first corner, but of course, you know, he had 500 horsepower, 600 horsepower, and he just kind of destroyed me by, I don't even know, probably 20 seconds on a 1-minute course. But that was my first interaction with Ken, and then being able to work with him in this capacity on Gymkhana 4 was so huge. It was the first time that I realized my photos were being seen by millions of people. Okay, so if you guys go back and watch Gymkhana 4, my photos were used in the actual video. So in certain parts of the video where they have the stills moving, they used it for the posters to advertise the project, as well as the thumbnail. So it was so groundbreaking for me to be able to be a part of this great project. And from then, I think I proved myself with the team, with him, Hoonigan Racing, and since then I just was lucky enough to be able to work with him in this capacity. And yeah, it's just a huge moment for me.
I remember, though, when I first got involved with your career, you still ran your family business. And you still had this whole other world that you kept going in addition to the photography. So I'd be interested, I think maybe by this stage you were still doing both. Is that right?
Well, yeah, so I did, a lot of people are probably wondering how I was able to afford to do this stuff. So out of high school, first thing I did was build computers. I was a computer nerd, right? So I still use PCs. I'm a PC gamer guy, right? So I got into building computers, fixing computers, doing house calls, doing whatever I could to scrounge up money. At one point, I was selling computers to telemarketer places. Like I would sell, I know how many ATX cases I could fit in a S13 hatch, you know? I would deliver these computers by sometimes the hundreds to these offices. They're just telemarketers, you know? And I would just do anything I could to make money. I was doing that. I was also selling nuts that you can eat, like peanuts, pecans, cashews. It was kind of a family business that my dad started before he left my life. He kind of just left me this business like, hey, you could sell nuts wholesale. Even just going to farmer's market and selling nuts. So I was selling nuts, I was doing that, and then it was really tough to make money around that time. And going to a lot of these car events, I met somebody who was a paparazzi, like a real Hollywood paparazzi. I don't know if
I'm remembering that
forgot
now.
that.
Yeah. The big lens.
Yeah, so there was one point when I got into doing paparazzi for about two and a half years. I've shot every big celebrity at that time. Like I hated it so much. It was very, very difficult. It was kind of fun sometimes. It was kind of like urban hunting, kind of like speed hunting. But, I mean, we shot everybody. You know, I was part of a huge team. It's a little different than what a lot of people think paparazzi is. It's not as scrappy as you guys probably think, like me hiding in the bushes, you know, popping out with my camera and just getting photos of people. We worked as a team, and we worked really hard, and we put in a lot of hours. And I did that in order for me to afford traveling to these places to photograph cars. I mean, I've shot Michael Jackson before he passed away, Britney Spears, Paris Hilton, Taylor Swift, anybody that was anybody around that time, Tom Cruise, whatever, Angelina Jolie. I have photos of all of them. And that I shot with my big lenses, the same equipment that I used to photograph cars, anything I could. Of course, the first moment I had a chance to quit to become a full-time car photographer, around that Speed Hunters era, I quit and I never looked back.
But I remember no one had the equipment you had in the paddock at that time. I forgot about the paparazzi thing.
Yeah, so, and in order for me to get the equipment, this is a story that I've told before, but I don't really say publicly. At the time, I just used equipment, right? So I was able to, at one point, scrounge up enough money to afford a 1D series of body, but it was a couple generations old. It was a 1D Mark II-N, super early in terms of like a professional digital camera. The sucker was so heavy, and but to me, it was like the coolest thing, right? But I knew I needed to step up my game in terms of having the right equipment, having that unfair advantage. That's something I talk about all the time when it comes to being in the field, when it comes to photographing cars. I had this opportunity where this big-time paparazzi guy had every lens I could ever imagine, like 85 1.2, 400 2.8, 600 f4, this, that, and the other. Every single camera, Canon prime lens, every single huge lens. I looked at it and I was like, this is insane. This is so much money that this guy has in camera equipment. And he was a paparazzi, and he was trying to get out of the game. He told me he knew how much I was obsessed with this equipment. In fact, that picture at the NISMO Festival was with one of his lenses that I was borrowing to go to Japan. But he knew I was so into photography itself, he offered me to essentially buy him like a motorcycle, like a brand new Harley Davidson, and he would give me all of that stuff, and I would just have to finance this motorcycle, and I would have to pay it off over time. This is a real story. And so legitimately, one day I showed up to Formula Drift. It must have been, I don't know, $40,000, $50,000 worth of lenses and equipment, and it was all mine just from that trade. And it took many, many years to pay off this motorcycle. And I was just so, but it's just such a weird story. And what's crazy is I still have a lot of those lenses today. Yeah. But it's about just taking these sacrifices, you know, to get to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I can feel the focus and passion you had, like the younger you. Amazing.
This is something that I thought about really early on. I thought that, hey, if a drift car is drifting and there's a car behind it, there potentially could be a way to photograph what's happening, right? And this is just an angle that, for me at least, what hasn't been seen before. This was in Norway at Got Built in 2011, a track, it's called Rudskogen, and I mounted a camera, I think it was a Rebel XT with a little arm. I mounted it to the nose of an E46 M3, and I just prayed and I hoped that it wouldn't fall off and it would yield something. And then this was one of the photos that came from it. But this was back in 2011, and for me, it was so groundbreaking to be able to make pictures that look like this. And now this is just something that I do normally on an everyday basis, including this weekend. I'm going to be doing it all weekend in my Toyota Supra to create images like this. But I think this was something that I really, really was proud of.
I watched you rig the camera up. This was also the cover of the first Speed Hunters book as well. Yeah, looking back, I didn't realize that was the first time you had done that. The next one is related to Gatbill. It's a little bit of a shared history between us, maybe.
Oh, no. Oh, that's your car right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
This is in Sweden.
Yeah, so this is...
2014.
First time we laid eyes on the car, the owner was like, hey, it's for sale. And then I was like, you gotta get it. You gotta buy it. You know, I'm the instigator. For this 935, and look, all these years later, it's just sitting right here. That's super cool. Yeah. I didn't even realize that was a thing back then, like buying a car in another country and, you know, eventually shipping it over. But yeah, it's super cool. And it became a Hot Wheel. This was a very groundbreaking shoot for me. This was the 316 speed Lamborghini, and it's has a Liberty Walk kit. We shot this right before the shutdown, winter of 2019, and we shot this for the launch of the 1DX Mark III. Right, so for whatever reason, I had a chance to start working with Canon, and a lot of it really started from the education portion of what I love to do. I love to teach. I love to inspire people in terms of getting them to photograph cars. So much of it is not the actual teaching, because I feel like you could pretty much watch a YouTube video and learn how to take pictures of cars. But what I love to do is I love to gather all the cool subjects together for people to photograph cars. So then Canon started taking notice in terms of what I'm doing to spread the love for photography. And then they offered me to help them launch this camera, which is the 1DX Mark III, which is just the top of the line flagship camera for them. And we went all out. We had this prototype camera. I think we had two for 7 days, and we took it on 5 shoots, 5 different scenarios. I took it up in a helicopter. We had this car driving around downtown LA. We went to a drift event. We did so many things in such a short amount of time just to push this body and just to push what's possible with car photography at the time.
I'd just like to zoom out and look at the timeline of your career, because we get a sense of you starting out, all the passion, just wanting to shoot, and then we see you funding your taking cameras, shooting cars, and during the Speed Hunters era, you had a retainer and things like that. But from, say, 2011 to this photo, can you just talk us through how things had progressed for you? And I'm very interested in when you went full time.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is another thing that I've talked about pretty often, but just to kind of sum it up super quick, there was a time when I was, doing the paparazzi, selling the nuts, being the nut man, and selling computers, doing everything I could. I would still have to do so much in terms of sacrificing to get to these shooting places because it's very expensive to travel. I would offer individuals like Formula Drift teams, I would tell them, hey, I can help you trailer your car across country for me to be able to shoot these events, to go to the East Coast. I couldn't afford a plane ticket at the time. And I couldn't afford a hotel room. So I would sleep on the floor of their hotel room and I would help them trailer their race cars.
Really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
so
Wow.
there was even one point when I was trailering Jeff Jones' FDRX7, this rotary powered one, on an open trailer, and he was sleeping in the bed of the truck in like a little camper shell, and we were going through a tunnel, and I already had an 8-hour shift, and I fell asleep. And the car or the truck started slowly drifting over, and I heard this loud noise. I woke up and I looked back, and his RX-7 on the trailer was kind of like riding the wall of the tunnel. And then I just like slowly, carefully drove it off of the wall of the tunnel. And then it made another loud bang because it came off the wall. And then I look in the rearview mirror and I see he just gets up from the truck bed because it was a loud noise. And he's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Nothing, just go back to sleep." And yeah, we made it, we made it for qualifying. But like, that's one of the fun stories I like to tell people when I tell them like the grind to even just get to these events. I did everything. I really did everything to get to that point. And my goal early on was to just eventually break even, because I was spending so much money. You guys can imagine how much it costs to go to Japan, to go to Europe, to go to all these events, and even just get there, get in front of the cool action. My goal was to break even, and then the next year or the years after that, my goal was to make $10,000. I was like, I have to make $10,000 for the year, okay? I have to make $10,000. And then it just kind of progressed until I finally got picked up by Speed Hunters. It was a struggle, but I still made it work. I still did my best to make the best pictures just for car culture.
And when I look at the people that are able to form full-time creative practices, whether they're musicians or designers or they're in fashion, automotive, I note that there's a character trait that they tend to have, and that is, one, an ability for suffering, right? They're really willing to live on a couch, in a closet, in a van. I think of some of my friends that are touring musicians, and they talk about how they're willing to just live in a van with their friends and drive around and do concerts, small concerts. And most people are not willing to do that. And just in reading these, the character, the younger you, I see that level of commitment. And for me, that's a commonality of people that find their way. They're willing to jump off a cliff, so to speak. Maybe you land on your feet, maybe you don't, but it's usually that willingness to go right to the edge that will determine whether something will work out for you in the end. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of a misconception when you look at this industry, especially the car media, car content creation industry. It seems so saturated, right? It seems like, oh, there's so many people starting their YouTube channels, and this guy has this many subscribers or this many followers on Instagram. Legitimately, there is so much content that needs to be created, so much work that needs to be done. I mean, even you guys, Race Service, me, I know we need help so bad because there's just not enough people willing to make that sacrifice. If you really, truly want it that bad, you'll make the sacrifice, you'll make the steps to get to that point, just like I did, just like you did, to get in front of the right people, to make the nice pictures, the great video. It's kind of incredible. Like, we're struggling all the time trying to find people to help, to be in the trenches with us, to suffer with us.
All right, what do we got next? I think this one is an interjection on my part, maybe.
Okay, another Hot Wheels. Well, that's my car right there. This was a pretty cool moment. I had a chance to shoot the HKS R32 Group A race car in Japan at the base of Mount Fuji at HKS in 2020, right before the shutdown. And then Hot Wheels reached out to me and they're like, hey, we would love to make a Hot Wheels 2-pack set of your car with the HKS car. And my request was, this was my first time ever working with Hot Wheels in this capacity. And my request was, hey, can I use photos of my car and the HKS car on the backing card? And they told me, hey, this has never happened since 1969, since we started Hot Wheels, but since you asked, we'll do it. So they did it. You know, it was such an honor to break that tradition because normally on the backing card, it's illustration. So for the first time ever, it's my photos and it has my name. And then I heard that they shipped over the car from Japan for a bunch of shows in the US. And I knew it was in LA, so I called up my friends from Evasive Motorsports who were taking care of it. And I'm like, hey, I have to recreate my Hot Wheels 2-pack in real life. And that's what I did.
And I think this is our last image. So talk us through this one.
This image I shot kind of, I think, late shutdown time. It was still kind of around that time where it was like iffy. We didn't know what was going to happen. But Nissan reached out to me full circle. I've always been a Nissan fanboy. I'm a Toyota fanboy, Mazda, Porsche. You know, I love cars so much. I love all sorts of cars. But Nissan has always had a special place in my heart because my 1972 40Z was my first sporty car. I bought for $3,000 on my 21st birthday. And I still have it today. Love that car. But it kind of got me into this side of car culture. And I loved the old Nissan advertisements for the 240Z, for the Skyline, R32, R33, R34. It really inspired me as a photographer. Those are the things that I downloaded as wallpapers. Those are the things that I bought on eBay and I hung up on my wall as like, oh, this is a brochure from back in whatever, 1995 or 1999, whatever. And full circle, when Nissan reached out to me to help them do the global launch of this Z, I was just so floored. I was just beside myself, So what I wanted to do was to recreate some photos of the R34 that this Japanese photographer did back then, back in 1998 when they launched that car with this. And yeah, it was just such an honor. It's crazy for me to think with these car launches, we've done so many of these now since then. The first time you guys, and the first time the public lays eyes on these cars is through my eyes, through my photos. So that's so important to me. I really take it to heart. So I try my best to do my absolute best to showcase how beautiful this car looks and how interesting it looks. And I just want to promote what they represent. These are brand new sports cars in 2024.
So was this the first time a car manufacturer engaged you to launch a car?
Before that, we've done a lot of commercial shooting for Toyota, for Dodge, for Chevy, for Ford, but not to this importance in terms of global launch. And then this was the one that kind of kicked it off for us. After this, we've done so many global launches, and we just recently did the global send-off, the sunset of the R35 GTR, which was so cool to be able to be the last person to send this car off into the sunset. It was a very big honor.
Well, thanks, Larry. I think we're going to take a break now. I think that's what my slide says. Yes, intermission.
All right, here we go.
So one of our intentions with Night School is to inspire and arm people, especially the aspiring photographers, content creators, and see what we can learn from you, Larry. What are the lessons, and what are the different elements of your practice as a photographer, now as a content creator. So let's just start diving in. And we're going to also look at key moments in your career, and we're going to see what we can learn from you. Cool?
Oh,
How
wow.
to start. And we talked about how you started at the beginning of your career, but I think you're around enough young photographers now, because the landscape has changed quite a bit with all the social platforms, et cetera, and the proliferation of cameras that are also you can talk into. What would your advice be to someone who's starting now?
It's insane. When I was first starting, I was, to be able to get the photos out because there wasn't social media yet, I was legitimately collecting people's emails so I could email them my most recent photos. It was getting to that point where it was so personal. Like I shot a certain car event or a certain meet or a race event, and I would just send people emails like one by one, not even like a mass email thing. Just, hey, check out my photos. I hope you like them. I would post on forums. I don't know if you guys remember those things. Forums. And then, I would just build my website and hopefully people would visit it. Now it's so much easier to share your work, to get your work in front of the people that matter. If I were to start now, that's probably a good way to put it, right? If I were to start my career now from zero, from picking up a camera to shoot video or to shoot photo, what would I do? The quick, easy answer is to just push hard to shoot as much good content and unique content as possible and get it out on social, tag the appropriate people, tag the teams, tag the drivers, tag the sponsors, the racetrack, everything, the camera manufacturers. Just flood the internet with your work. If your work is truly outstanding, if there's something unique to it, or if it's just special in that you're the only one that has this sort of photo, then it's going to work. It's going to work, you're gonna get people's attentions, right? So what I tell people, a lot of people ask me, hey, how do I shoot Formula Drift? Or how do I shoot Pikes Peak or this? I tell them, you're just starting out, you're just aiming for this goal that's you'll eventually hit, but maybe it's better just to shoot at your local track, Cars and Coffee, your friends, make friends, go out and meet people, local dirt track racing, circle track, drifting, amateur events. The great thing now is there's so many car things happening. Like this is a car thing. There's so many car things happening every single day, every single weekend. I do not have enough weekends in my lifetime to go to all of these events, these incredible events. There was at one point, I remember when I was starting, it was hard to find cars to shoot. It was hard to even gather a couple people together with the same car just to photograph them. But now it's so easy. It's like cheating. But of course, there is a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of people that are doing the same thing. But I've seen so many people start after me and become very successful photographers and videographers by just doing exactly this. If I keep seeing the same people at these events, I keep seeing their work on my feed, then I know this individual is doing the right thing and they're getting their work in front of the right people.
We'll dissect this in more detail as we go, because I've got more specific questions. I would like you to talk through the attributes of a functional creative, of someone who is a full-time professional photographer, or what you think the requirements are for someone to bridge that gap, get the clients, get the retainers, get signed by an agency, get hired by the racing team, the international level racing team. Break down for me all the different aspects of what you think makes a complete, functional, professional, creative photographer.
One of the things that I really talk about all the time when it comes to being a photographer and doing this sort of work, this creative work as a full-time gig, there's so many other things important versus just making the good picture or incredible video. It's not just about creating that art. It's so much leading up to that, down to like physical things in terms of traveling correctly, protecting your gear, backing up your footage or stills, just everything leading up to you actually taking the picture. And then, of course, being as easy to work with as possible, being personable, being friendly, making friends. The same people that I started working with way back in 2006 are the same people that I'm working with today. And I've progressed in my career since then, and these same individuals that I worked with way back when, they have also progressed. And because I've built up these relationships for all this time, we enjoy working together because honestly, to me, it doesn't even feel like work. It's just so much fun to create and to be passionate about this thing that I do. We just want to work together all the time, when we've been working together for so long and we're still working together.
I read recently that to find fulfillment as a creative, if an outside person were to look at you, they wouldn't know if you're hanging out with your friends, if you're doing your hobby, if you're messing around, you're working as a professional. All these things blend together. And that is the place that one should aspire to find as a professional creative, which is, in my mind, what you just described. All right, what's the next slide? Entrepreneurial. So this is an interesting thing. We could also look at it from the perspective of the business that you've built and how you've scaled. Because we know that earlier on, there was Larry Chen carrying the gear around, shooting. I don't know why have you noticed there's people that are either their first name or the first and second name? You are a Larry Chen. Does anyone call you Larry? Anyway, Larry Chen carrying the gear around. But at a certain point, you brought in more people and you scaled the operation. And so I just want you to talk through how when you first started to think, okay, I need more people on my team, I'm going to scale, I'm going to develop this further. And maybe some of the lessons and even feeling vulnerable as you were doing that stage.
Yes, the people or the incredible individuals that help me now, they look at me and they're like, I don't know how you did this as a one person. How is it that you were able to take on these tasks? And one of those tasks was being the Formula Drift official photographer. I've been the official photographer since 2012. And at the time, I was solo, and I was just taking on this monumental task of recording what was happening for history, but also working for as many teams, drivers, sponsors as possible to make ends meet, to make my time worthwhile. Which means some of these events, as you know, end past midnight, and then that's me getting onto the computer, culling these photos, editing, publishing that night, which of course ends up being that morning, to the point where, like, as soon as I'm done with my work, I'll go to the only thing that's open, which is Waffle House, somewhere, in Atlanta or wherever.
I kind of like the grits there, though.
Yeah,
they're kind of...
and then the teams are coming in either for breakfast or they're coming in from a night of partying, from doing well or doing poorly or whatever, and they look at me just alone in a booth, just suffering, and I just tell them, like, I have no choice. I have to do this. There's no other way to do this. And then eventually I just figured, you know what, I just need help. I need help to and basically make clones of myself. And after all this time, I've had so much incredible help over these years. The thing that I always have to think about is that no matter what I do, as much as I try to mold these individuals into mini-me's, they're not going to be exactly me. They're individuals, and they shoot the way they shoot, they edit the way they edit, and I really try to just use their strengths to help this goal of just shooting as much car culture as possible, doing all the shows that we do, covering all the worldwide launches of these vehicles that we do. It's something. I never was meant to be in charge of people, I feel like. I'm actually pretty introverted. I was very, very quiet as a child, and it was really hard for me to speak publicly, but I just kind of forced myself to do this, to learn this role, and I'm still learning every single day. Being in front of camera, that's something that we'll probably talk about later, but it's something that I have to do now. I have to be in front of camera. And that's okay. If it keeps allowing me to do what I'm doing, and it keeps giving me all these incredible opportunities, then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to try my best. Jeez. See?
I have mind control. That's a thing. Okay. Anyway, so we know that you spend a lot of time running around the racetracks, shooting the cars, behind the camera, holding the camera, giant lens, all that stuff. At some point, things change, right? Now you're in front of the camera. And I know you thought about this for a while. I remember having conversations with you when you were considering what you should do. And so why don't you talk us through, let's do this in two parts. Let's talk about the pivot and what was coming up inside of you, why you wanted to start, and the conditions around you starting with YouTube. And then we'll get into maybe a bit more of the motivation behind it in a second. So just talk us through the pivot. Let's see what we can learn about pivoting.
So before we go into that, can I just give some advice? So it's really two key pieces of advice that I've really, I guess three. One that you've taught me that I've really tried to follow as a rule in terms of how I do my work or how I am in life. One really, really big important thing is you cannot burn bridges in this industry. You have to do your absolute best to not fail. If you think you're gonna fail at a job, if you're not gonna be able to perform to your best abilities, then it's better to either hold back or somehow save it versus failing, because these individuals that are in the position to get you this work, they'll remember legitimately forever. Forever. And I've made some mistakes early on in my career, and those individuals, I've never worked with them, or they're the business that they're with, and it could be as big as a manufacturer, or it could be as little as a race shop or tire manufacturer, whatever. It's something that I really take to heart, and I remember, like, we just have to succeed. If we're hired for something, we work to our best abilities and make sure they're happy with the work, And yeah, that's just how you build your reputation. That's one. Two is something that you taught us at Speed Hunters, which we really take to heart. To this day, you can see it very clearly when you see all of our content on YouTube and pretty much everything that I post. Being very, very positive about these vehicles, even though they could be something that's pretty badly built, janky, falling apart, blown up, whatever. We still focus on the positives. And we try to tell the best story because the owner or the builder or whomever, they put their effort into it. They didn't maybe purposely make it so janky, but it's just something, they took their best shot at it, and we have to take our best shot to be as positive as possible. It's too easy, as you guys know, to put people down in this industry with cars, making fun of people's builds, making fun of their paint jobs, making fun of Bluetooth drive shafts and stuff. While it's fun to just laugh about it, I really, really try to be as positive as possible. That's two. One last thing is the one-on-one interaction, for me, the most important thing ever. So important. I meet thousands of people every single year. I'm shaking so many hands. I'm meeting all these people all over the world, nonstop. I try my absolute best to make the one-on-one interaction as pleasant as possible because it may be the only time that I will ever meet this person. Or if I made a good impression on this person, maybe this person will be in a position of power to get me some job or whatever. It's a snowball effect. And I find that is so important. These three things, I think about all the time, and I try to be as true and follow these rules.
Yeah, amazing advice.
Oh yeah, getting in front of camera.
Introvert.
I'll try to make this quick so we can go on to the next thing. The main thing about me being in front of camera is exactly what I did when I started publishing my photos in as high resolution as possible. I'm trying to create content that I would have enjoyed as a little kid, as somebody growing up who didn't have access to any of these cars. For those of you guys, you guys probably remember at one point we were scrounging for content. We were scrounging, we were illegally downloading Top Gear, Best Motoring, Option, all of this stuff, because we couldn't have this. We couldn't have access to it. There wasn't enough material on the internet for us car nerds to be satisfied. And then so now, you can't watch all of the incredible content out there because there's just not enough time in your day. But for me, I just want to create content that I would have loved to enjoy way back when. So now that I've turned the camera on myself and I'm in front of camera, I've just taken it like a personal responsibility to A, create that content, and B, a huge thing is there's not really that many print magazines anymore that we grew up with, like Super Street, Import Tuner, Sport Compact Car, the ones that I really loved, the ones that I read. Hot Rod Magazine is not even a thing anymore. It's like toilet paper now, unfortunately. It's just too bad that this thing is dying. What I found that I'm doing now is kind of replacing that. I'm doing my absolute best to tell these stories of these incredible cars, builders, just the people behind this culture that we love.
Did any part of you, as a natural quiet person, introvert, feel resistance to this feeling? I know a lot of creatives somehow don't like the idea of having to talk to the camera to present their work and their practice. Did you have any of that at all, or was it just like, turn the camera on, I'm going to talk? I love the camera.
No, I always, as a kid, I would run away from the camera. I hated hearing my own voice. It was super embarrassing for me. And it was just something that I really forced my way into. I really did. Like, I just butted my way into it, you know? At one point, Hoonigan was filming their YouTube show. You know, it was a daily show. I would just make that long drive to Long Beach just to, like, appear in the background, you know? I'm just like, hey, I'm here, you know, maybe I can contribute somehow. And, you know, eventually I got a segment on their Friday show. And then eventually I pretty much took over that entire show. And then eventually I took over one of their channels. And then eventually I had my own YouTube channel. And then at the end, I ended up purchasing my channel. And now it's my own channel. So it's just like all these baby steps to get in front of camera.
So this is an interesting predicament because you talked about there's noise out there now, right? There are so many people that are holding cameras, not only pointing them at cars, but just in general. There are so many people that are turning that camera around to themselves. There's so many people giving photography tutorials now. In this sea of creatives and a sea of people that are holding cameras, pointing it at subjects or pointing at themselves, how does one stand out now?
One of the things I always like to say is, if I'm at the side of a racetrack, or if I'm at Pikes Peak, or if I'm wherever, I look around and I'm the only photographer there, that means I'm creating the best photos of what's happening, of this scene. People know this exists because of me, and I have no competition. And that's something that I'm always pushing for. But that's also something that anybody can push for. You go to a Cars and Coffee, make a friend with a certain somebody with a nice car. You know, develop that relationship, build that relationship. Maybe you can photograph this car in a spot that you saw somewhere where you're like, oh, it would be so cool if there was a car here. You know, we do like a whole fun photo shoot out of it. Or you go to the local drift track and you're the only one there shooting photos or video. And then you're creating this content that otherwise wouldn't exist. You're creating the best photos and best videos that exist of that moment. And nobody can compete against you because they're not there. So that's something that I'm always thinking about. Like, I need that special access. I need that early access. I need to be there earlier than everyone else and stay later than everyone else. So it's just so much about that. So that's what makes it special, right? You go to a local, it could even just be like a HPD, high performance driving, normal track day. You're on the side of the road of the track. Can you imagine how much these photos mean to these individuals that you're creating, or this content? Because otherwise it wouldn't exist. It's just something I think about all the time.
We know that there's the craft of photography, the craft of filmmaking, and one must be very good at that. One must understand light, composition, color, and all the aspects of operating a camera. But, and you've touched upon this a few times, there's the aspect of communicating, business, having industry friends. So can you just talk through these two aspects of the practice of being a professional creative? The craft, being good at the craft, but also this other aspect, which some people, especially the quiet introverts, don't necessarily enjoy, but yet they have to do it.
I think this is good in that there's definitely a balance with craft and context, or craft and the business side of things. For me, it's about, I would say, half and half. The craft is important. That's why we have the best gear. We use Canon cameras. We always use the latest lenses, all the latest technology. Anything that comes out, I have to be the first one to try it, because that's the thing that's going to give us the unfair advantage to get better shots, to get shots that are more outstanding, or at least even have a chance to get a better shot. So that's the craft part. I see so many photographers that are absolutely excellent at their craft. They're so good. They're so good, it hurts. I look at it and I'm like, how? How can they create this incredible imagery? I couldn't even fathom being able to create imagery like that. But if they're lacking on the business side, on the contacts, being personable, being fun to be around, being nice, following up, all of that, then they won't be able to practice their craft. The more contacts you have, the more business sense you have, the friendlier you are, the easier you are to work with, the better you are at communicating, I think you have more chances to practice your craft, and then you get better at that. So, and then there are a lot of photographers that are flipped the other way, where they're really good at the business sense, kind of lacking on the craft side, which is fine, you know, like to each his own. Everybody can eat. There's enough work for everybody, legitimately. It's insane. I cannot tell you guys how much I have to turn down every single day in terms of work, because we just have to, we have so little time, we have to pick and choose what we want to do, because I only have so much time. But there's just so much stuff to be created. The appetite for content creation is insane. You guys know it. I mean, I'm sure you guys are on your phone just looking at this incredible stuff and you can't get enough of it.
This is my last question to you. So, young Larry Chen, right? Putting the computers in the back of the S13.
Yeah.
Given what you've experienced...
Which, by the way, I want to make a note. I chased Paris Hilton a lot with my...
S13?
1991, 5-speed, white S13 hatch. It was so standout compared to everybody else's Range Rovers, Ford Explorers, SUVs.
What kind of wheels?
I'm over here... Stock.
Stock! Oh.
I couldn't afford wheels. I'm over here redlining this thing, bouncing off rev limiter, trying to keep up. I mean, you guys probably, I don't know if you guys remember during that time where the light would turn red, and then there's paparazzi chasing whatever, Britney Spears or Paris Hilton, and then it would turn green again, and then it would turn red again. And there's still cars going through, like 50 cars, chasing this one person. But I'm here with my S13. I have pictures, by the way, of me I left it running, door open, and it's in the background of like a Paris Hilton shot.
It's amazing. Anyway, young Larry Chen. So given what you've experienced now, things have worked out. You are pointing cameras at cars, and there's a company. There's numerous builds. You have a successful content program going. So let's imagine young Larry Chen is feeling a bit discouraged. What advice would you give?
It's really tough to say. I always had the drive. Even when I was really young, I just knew I had this drive to do something, like something that I'm proud of, something that I can really sink my teeth into. I just didn't really know what it was, and it just took time to develop. I mean, I always had a love for cars, and I always had a love for driving, you know, when I first got my driver's license, and that's why now I'm getting behind the wheel as much as I can. I'm racing as much as I can, drifting, because that was what pushed me to love cars in the first place. Just being behind the wheel, that freedom, this mechanical thing that gives you emotion. It's kind of tough to say. I don't know. I mean, I'm just along for the ride. You know, I just It's not lost on me what I do. It's insane. I mean, before coming here, I was shooting with Jay Leno, you know? That's like so bad in terms of like, I'm not trying to show off or anything, but I'm just saying like, it's really not lost on me. I have to pinch myself all the time. I still love it. I love it so much, and this is what drives me. Yeah, it's a lot of people ask me, how is it that you stay interested in this stuff? Don't you get burnt out? I mean, maybe eventually one day if I do get burnt out, I'll stop. But I just do not foresee that happening. It's too good. It's a life worth living. That's what I always say.
Well, I am going to be leaving the stage now, and I'm going to be handing over to Andrew. That's your Instagram handle, right? Andrew for the win. So that ends my conversation with you, but Andrew's going to come up. You may want to chat with Larry a bit, and then we'll be moving into our Q&A. Cool? But thanks, everyone. And
thank you.
Over to Andrew.
Shoot, Rod, I didn't prepare cool slides or anything like that. Is that okay? No, I think that we should jump into Q&A pretty quick. I want everybody to have a chance to ask questions and all that. But as I was listening to that, I think, Rod, you nailed that. Like I had like my little phone notes of a couple questions. I was like, all right, well, check that box. So great answers, great questions. Y'all vibing with this? Does it feel good? Inspired? All right.
Thank you guys again for coming. Thank you guys for staying late.
It's crazy.
It's incredible.
It's cool too. Like I feel like when I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I kind of just try to get super lost in it and like really think about what you're saying. And there's a couple of things you've said where I'm just like, yeah, that holds up. Like that thing you said about just doing, like making the content for young you. I was like, yeah, damn, it is that simple. Like, I think you can kind of get caught in like the metrics of the internet or be like, what is success? It's this many likes, it's getting paid for a post. And it's like, hearing you say that, I'm like, nah, it's just like, make that thing you love.
Yeah, chasing just the money is the wrong thing to do. When people ask me, like, how do you make money in this industry? I tell them, like, look, this might not be the right industry for you if you're just thinking about money. The money will come if you're truly outstanding and if you push hard enough. It will come. But if that's the sole reason, it's not worth it.
Yeah, that's so well said. But as you were talking about that, I was just like, yeah, that's it. So I had a couple questions, but I think mine to kick off and to inspire some people to ask, I kind of want to hear about like what your goals are now. Like I had a question of like, is there an I made it moment and advice, like how to stay motivated. I think you talked about a lot of that. I think you're really appreciative, but I'm curious now, you know your career, you've had these crazy moments, super humble, but when you look at 2025, like clearly you're still so motivated doing the thing. Do you have goals? Like what do you look at now? Like what are your benchmarks for yourself? What are these goals as you look at the next year?
That's difficult. There's a lot of goals that I want to achieve. I think one is really focusing on my driving, on my racing. I really, really think it's such a good test of real skill. It doesn't really matter, where you come from. You're a man, you're a woman, you're disabled, you're whatever, rich, poor. In terms of pure skill, being behind the wheel of a car, it's incredible. You're battling it out with these other individuals. It's like being a gladiator, I guess, but in modern terms, you're just fighting, and it's just this feeling that I've never felt before, and it's really incredible. And in terms of life fulfillment, for me to develop that more is really important. And part of it is something that I've been saying a lot. I'm kind of tired of watching everyone else have fun. I want to have some fun myself. I've been literally photographing and documenting other people having fun. I cannot tell you how much fun these people are having behind the wheel, in a drift car, in a race car. they just have this smile from ear to ear, or maybe they're serious, but in their mind, they're just like, this is the best time ever. You know, I think about that all the time when I'm on a straightaway, because for those of you guys who don't know, when you're racing, when you're on a straightaway, that's the time to take a breather. I just think, okay, gotta move my fingers, gotta, loosen my toes a little bit, and then come turn one, I'm like, all right, back into it. Boom, hard on the brakes. And when I'm thinking that, I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I'm having the most fun ever. I'm dying because I'm so hot in my race suit and helmet and everything, and sweat into my eye. But I'm like, this is the best. I've made it. This is it. Even if I'm in last place, I don't care. This is it.
I think that kind of comes back to that thing, though, that you were saying is like the content you were making, everything you're doing, like you're doing the stuff that you'd want to see. So now this is an evolution where you're doing the stuff you'd want to do, and it's coming from a place of just passion.
Yeah, it's an ultimate test of skill, and I love it so much, and it's just something that I want to do more of, and I also want to shoot more. There's so many Halo events that I need to shoot still. I need to shoot Monaco, I need to shoot Dakar, I need to shoot 12 hours of Bathurst. The list goes on. There's just so many things, car culture, events, collections that I need to uncover, amazing builds, home builds, $500 cars, $1 million cars. It's unlimited, and that's the beauty of it.
So that spark is absolutely still there. Like you're still all in.
Yeah, and another thing that I've been talking about a lot is the racetracks. How many racetracks there are in the world, or just even in the US, that I haven't experienced. I'm going to try my darndest to experience as many of them as possible, but I'll tell you right now, if I try even from now to the rest of my life, I won't be able to drive all of them, even in the US, because there's so many. And there's so many new ones. And there's just not enough time, and that's the beauty of it. It's so beautiful.
That's awesome. All right, I want to share the questions with everyone. I want everyone to get a chance. Anyone want to kick off with a question? Anyone? All right.
That was quick.
Yeah, that was dope. I'm not sure. I might walk over. I think there's no rules here. I'm just going to jump over to you. Make sure that you get the mic, at least to ask it, so you don't have to yell across the room.
Hey, Larry. You inspire a lot of photographers out here, which is incredible to see. I just want to know what kind of photographer, or who as a photographer, inspires you to create the work that you create.
The people that inspire me, initially before I started car photography, were the wire photographers, news photographers, embedded White House photographers, the conflict photographers, the war photographers. They inspired me because their ingenuity, their use of remote cameras and technology to their advantage, and just the hardships that they endured to create these images for the greater good of mankind, or just to create art. That first inspired me before I got into car photography. And then what inspires me now are the people that I'm in the trenches with. Those individuals that I tell you about now, that I can name endless names, that when I look at their pictures, even if they were standing next to me, I look at their pictures, I'm like, wow, that's incredible. That's beautiful. And it's just so cool to see what's possible. What's beyond what I can even imagine. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do slow shutter, I'm going to do this pan, I'm going to shoot through this thing. And I look at their photos, I'm like, wow, incredible.
Great question, great answer. Anyone else? What else do we got? Yeah?
So hearing you talk about finally getting behind the wheel and that feeling that tingling sensation as you go around the turn, some of us only get to pretend. My Camry from Joshua Tree on the way here, I practice my driving lines, pretend it's a twin turbo. It's fun. So in your work, you sound like a machine. For all these years, you're out there living your work. In fact, you say it's not entirely like work because you enjoy it so much. But have you ever found a challenge, finding a balance. Like, for example, between contacts and friends, or are they kind of sometimes the same thing? Or between your craft and finding balance doing other things in life?
Yeah, it's very, very, very difficult, and I've made so many sacrifices to get to this point. My family has made sacrifices, my wife, my kids. It's tough to measure. You know, especially now, I look at my calendar and I see how many days I'm away from home, and how many days I have been away from home, and how many friends I've completely lost contact with. It's always a give and take. You know, I've given up a lot, and for every individual, they kind of just have to figure out what's worth it to them to give up. We all have the same time, and it's just about us divvying it up the way that we need to divvy it up. And that's a really, really good point about your friends, your contacts, like the people that you work with. It's just, I guess I call it kind of my road family. I have friends all over the world. And it's just these relationships that I've developed. And it's just something that I nurture, I look forward to. You know, it's traveling, meeting these people, making friends, developing these relationships. It really is the spice of life. It's really incredible because I'm meeting all these people that are just as passionate, if not more passionate than I am with this culture. And it's just so many, look how many like-minded people are here, you know? It's something that we can't even hold back. And it's even bigger than ever. Look at F1. Look how popular F1 is here in the States. Who would have thought it would get to this point? It's incredible. So I don't know. I went off on a tangent, but yeah, it's a sacrifice for sure.
Word. Again, really, really good. What else we got?
All right, so you mentioned that you had a shot JPEG until 2013, and I was just going through my LoveGecko pictures from the very first one that I did the same mistake. Is there any photo shoot that you've done that now you look back and you wish you could jump into a DeLorean and go over 88 miles an hour and redo that back then it looked good, but compared to the skill you have now that you wish you could go back to and redo?
That's a really tough one because I'm always chasing better technology. Even with the technology that we have now, I feel like there's always something better, you know, because it's just something that develops. And skill also, it's just something that develops, and so much of it comes from experience. That's really tough to say. I think I have to say one big thing for me is not so much going back and redoing an event. I would say it's going back and even having the opportunity to do an event. One of my greatest regrets in my career was missing out on Gymkhana 5, which was the San Francisco one. Ken invited me to come shoot the San Francisco Gymkhana 5, which was, of course, the most iconic one. And I just got the job as the Formula Drift official photographer, and it was the second ever time I was the official photographer. It was Formula Drift Atlanta, and then it just happened to be on the same dates. And I just thought to myself, you know what? Something like Formula Drift, it's a longevity thing. I have to be committed to it, and I just have to turn down Ken. And I'm still the Formula Drift official photographer after all these years, but I missed out on something so historic in car culture, and I regret it to this day. But after that, I tried my absolute best to not ever miss a shoot with Ken.
Damn. I want to press on Leo's though, like just for the fun of like, I feel what you're saying, like you go back and you see colors that you've done in the past and you're like, what was I thinking? Do you have any of those of like a photo or a set of yours that we could Google where like, it's just like that joke of like, I could have done that better?
Yeah, I have, at the time, I looked at like Option Magazine. They did a lot of JDM Dutch angle where the car is completely tilted, and then you think, what part of the track is that? What part of the parking lot is it a complete 45-degree uphill angle? I regret doing that, and I promise I try my best now to keep my horizons as straight as possible because of how embarrassing those photos were back then.
So you had some heavily inspired option photos there for a minute? Respect. I haven't forgotten about you, but I got to show love to this side. What do we got? I see two over here. I got you, dog. I still got you.
So you've captured, like you just mentioned, Gymkhana 5, so much of the iconic Gymkhana content that we've seen over the years that's inspired probably everyone in this room, millions of people all over the world. And coming from like a YouTube strategy position, that's what I do for work. Gymkhana was one of the few things that transcended car culture into larger YouTube, because we want to think YouTube is, the car culture is huge on YouTube. It's actually a really small part of YouTube. I wish it was more of it. But that was transcendent. And nothing's ever going to replace that. Like no one could ever, Ken was singular, no one could ever replace that. But where do we go from here, in your opinion? Like what's going to come next? What's going to be the thing, or do you have any ideas about what that might be that will be transcendent to take car culture on YouTube out to the masses the way that Gymkhana did? It was responsible for me doing a lot of what I did at work. So it's something that I've thought about quite a bit.
Yeah, it's
Good one.
It's something that I think about all the time, right? Because of what Ken and his team have done, hundreds of millions of people have seen my photos. My goal on those always was to get that thumbnail shot, that all-important thumbnail shot. It's the lead thing. It's the thing that you see first. And then it's something I think about all the time. I look at an airport or an airplane or any crowd, and I think to myself, it's just a funny little thing that I think about. I'm like, how many of these people have seen my photos? There's a pretty darn good chance they have, because it's just the way the world is. You know, we're so lucky that car culture is this prevalent because of amazing individuals like Ken. I do have to say, one thing that I'm really positive about is how many people are consuming this very extra nerdy content now. It's crazy. You watch TJ Hunt, Adam LZ, you watch Cletus McFarlane, you know, Garrett. You watch their stuff, and so many other content creators like them, Dustin Williams, Gears and Gasoline. Man, these guys are nerds, like straight up car nerds. They get into the smallest, most technical things that a lot of times I don't even understand. And there's people to consume this content. There's people that are like, we want more. Or you look at the comment section, it's like, oh, he went with this turbo. He should have went with this because of this. I'm like, what? How do you even know this stuff? You know, and it's a lot of the population. It's so many people. And that's what makes me so positive about these content creators creating content that these people want to watch and want to consume. It really is crazy. Before, when I was growing up, watching like Power Block, whatever the TV stuff that was available, it was so diluted and it wasn't specific at all. It wasn't nerdy at all. And it was just like for the masses, and it was kind of sad, to be honest, you know. But now, that's what makes me feel really good.
So you think like the Gymkhana era of like the crazy views and this epic like blockbuster of YouTube thing is maybe not what it is, and it's just this wider depth of deeper knowledge?
I don't know if it's possible to kind of hit that high again. I know people will still try. And like, for example, individuals like Travis Pastrana will almost kill themselves trying. I've watched him almost jump to his death. I've never heard a human make that loud of a sound after hitting the ground, you know, when his parachute failed on the last Gymkhana. People are going to try, and hopefully they do succeed.
Yeah.
But I know the constant now is are these incredible content creators that I look up to, that I'm lucky enough to be able to work with side by side, that are creating this content, that are getting these amazing views. It's no longer, okay, we worked all this time to make this one video and it gets all these views. It's somebody like Garrett Mitchell, super smart guy, having that persona as Cletus, coming out with one video every day or every other day, and each one gets 1 million views.
Yeah, so it's the consistency now.
Think about 1 million people. Think about how many people that is. That's a lot of people.
That's at least 10 times more than what's here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Years. I was wondering if you could speak on the importance of self-care, health and wellness to creating consistency over an 18-year career.
Yeah, that's really, really important. So I try my absolute best to be as healthy as possible. It's really hard traveling all over the place, especially going to Japan. It's impossible to eat right, I feel like, in Japan, because there's so much good
7-Eleven
food.
food is so good too.
So I try my best to walk as much as I can. I have a pretty good regimen that I follow in terms of how many calories I intake, how much protein I'm taking in. I used to do a lot of rock climbing, and I quit when my kids were born, and now I'm taking it up again because it's just a good way to focus on something else, focus on myself physically, and it's the utmost importance, especially when you're burning the candle on both ends, when you're going to really harsh places like Pikes Peak, when there's 40% less oxygen and you have to push your absolute hardest. You push your body to the physical limit in terms of how much you can carry and how fast you can go to make these pictures. It's something I think about all the time, and if you watch my content, you'll see me struggling, complaining, out of breath, suffering, people like to comment, "Oh, I can't believe this guy's complaining, doing his dream job." It's very, very difficult, and it's something that I train for. It's something that I prepare for.
I was gonna say, as you become more of a professional now, is that kind of part of the discipline? What comes with it is that you do have to be aware of your nutrition and know that you're traveling a ton. So being responsible about it.
Yeah, and it's even more important now for me now I'm racing. A lot of people don't understand how physical racing is, especially not having power-assisted brakes or power steering. It's something that you just have to battle. I'm using legitimately all of my strength to muscle these things around. And just because you're moving your body when you're shooting cars, when you're just photographing in general, in time space. You're moving this camera in time space, meaning it could be on top of a roof, on top of a mountain. It could be, crouching through wherever or going to all these crazy places. That's how you make these pictures. You can't just do it from your couch.
Yeah.
You can't just do it from the side of the road.
Yeah.
You have to move.
Take care of yourself.
And that's really important. That's a good question.
Super good.
So I was going to be 2 questions, but I'm going to cut it down to 1. So, in the automotive creative space, what do you think there is missing? Because, there's so many channels and everything, and it gets pretty redundant with everybody's their own thing. Everybody's different. But what do you think there's missing in the automotive creative space?
That's tough. That's a tough one. I feel like, I guess that's the whole thing about you don't know what's the next hit song because you don't know. I don't know if I'm really craving anything in terms of what's potentially missing. I am very well aware of what all the other content creators are doing, and I just really like seeing the great lengths these people are going to stand out, to be different, to create entertaining content. I'm always looking forward to the next thing, whatever they're making, whatever they're building.
You said something where you were talking about like being the only photographer, the only creator at a place, and finding ways to stand out and do that. So it's like maybe it's a little bit of that, huh?
One note on that, a lot of people see what I'm shooting, especially in person. They're showing me this thing, or they see me seeing this build for the first time, and they look at me and they're like, "Why do you act surprised?" I say to them, "What you would be amazed at how often I get surprised at all of this ingenuity, this new way to enjoy cars or new way to build a car. It's endless. It really is. Just like when I relate it to music, the new hits, they're endless. It's going to go forever. And I'm constantly surprised at what's possible, even with the same old cars. You know, a new way to rebuild a A86 or this, that, and other. It's ingenious. It's really cool.
Hi. So I'm currently in this phase where I'm like doing the things like sleeping on floors, taking like the cheapest flights I can. So it's like overnight with a bunch of layovers. Did you ever have a time in your life when you were doing those things where you were like, should I just give up? Like, is this even going to work? Because I'm there right now and I'm like, this sucks.
It's not easy. It really isn't. And if it was easy, so many more people would do it. The point is that it's going to be more satisfying once it breaks through because of what you've put into it, the sacrifices that you've made for it. It's everything is important. You know, every little thing leading up to it, something can go wrong. You can miss a connection. You can get a flat tire. There's just so many things. It's incredible that if it goes right, it's like, wow, I did all this just to get to this point, and then now it's up to you to be behind the camera, to just do the thing that you love, to do this thing, to shoot video or shoot stills. What are you doing, shooting stills? So, it's like leading up to that, then you do you, and then it's about pushing hard to publish correctly, putting the effort to post-process correctly. It's not easy. You know, I'm not gonna lie, it was very hard to get to this point. A lot of people ask me, what's the overnight quick way to do what you're doing? I've been shooting for almost 21 years now, and it's been such a gradual thing. From the moment I picked up my camera till now, it's all baby steps for 21 years. So I just tell people, hey, pick up a camera and shoot for 20 years, and then, you know, it'll work.
That's awesome. But I mean, I think it comes back to too, is like you just like doing it. Like you kept doing it from this passion, not from that like looking for success outside. So that's cool. I think that's it. I think let's let everyone wrap, and if you want to kick it and grab a couple after that.
Thank you guys.
Rod did have
really
a request.